afternoon, and thanks for joining us for the Organizing a Science Fair. We're going to talk about the aspects and benefits of incorporating a fair into your curriculum. I am Heidi Rethmeier. I'm a staff developer at ESU 8, and in my former life, I was a STEM teacher at Elgin, and I had the privilege of coming into a very well-established science program and science fair with my fellow science teacher, Sara Walsh. I will let her, she's my co-presenter today, so I'll let her introduce herself too.
Currently, I am an assistant professor at Wayne State College in the School of Education, and my duties here include instruction for elementary and middle school teachers in the science methods courses and psych and other classes. But in my former life, I was the 712 science teacher at Elgin for 11 years, and did start the science fair at Elgin. And when I became aboard it, we were able to really build it up to a good fair. So we'd like to share some of the things that we learned through this process with you.
Sure. And Sarah, you're kind of fading in and out when you're talking, so I don't know if
Okay.
you have to hold the microphone closer. But
Okay. Sorry.
okay, well, we wanted to take a little poll today. I'll put it up so you can just, if you're looking at the recording of this, you can ask yourself, do you currently have a science fair at your school? And if you do, are you a Sheldon Cooper of the science fair? You are all over this. Or maybe you're like Raj and Howard and you just need some tips, and hopefully we can provide some of that. Or maybe you've been stuck in your labs and really haven't had the time or opportunity. So hopefully we can provide some resources to make it a little easier and more time efficient for you. Or if you were looking for maybe a fair with deep fat fried Twinkies, unless it happens to be part of a project in your fair, I'm not sure we can help you. So, oh, Jennifer, thank you for joining us. You want to take our poll, Jennifer? Maybe she doesn't have her volume up yet. All right. Great, thanks. And if you have any questions while we're going through this for the live webinar, there should be a chat box down in the lower right. Just send us questions and we'd be happy to answer them for you. So why should you have a science fair? Well, it's a great opportunity to teach students about an independent research project and using the scientific method. Really, the best way to learn the scientific method is to actually do it and then explain your process to someone else.
Science fairs, science fairs provide students with meaningful learning with an opportunity to study a topic they are interested in. Research has proven again and again that that information is going to stick if it's meaningful and you have an automatic motivator. If it's something that they're interested in, it's going to be a project that they're going to engage in and really be able to learn from.
They also will generate a greater appreciation for the wonders of science. We really want to encourage them to ask questions and ask why, and perhaps understand the process that a scientist would go through to help answer some of those questions.
And finally, science fairs teach the students communication skills and critical thinking skills. And regardless of what field students enter, these are two very, very important skills that employers are looking for, communication and critical thinking.
And some logistics.
Right. Anybody can really do a science fair, but it's probably the most applicable to a middle school or a high school setting. In my position, I was a 712 science teacher, so we did the 7 through 12 range. However, where I'm at now, I'm able to assist with some upper elementary science fairs too, a 4 to 6th grade range, and those work very well as well. Most science fairs are held in the spring. Part of the reason for that is they do have some knowledge from the year prior of science, but also because there's a lot of competitions held during the spring. The one at NECC is called the Health Science Meet, and this year that was on March 24th. And with this meet, students bring their projects, they present them, and if they qualify, they can attend the State Health Science Meet for 3 days in Omaha, all expense paid trip. Wayne State also hosts a science meet, and this year it was on March 28th, and that was the NJAS Science Meet. And that is also a statewide competition. The top 5 in their group, if they're in the high school division, will move on to nationals. That's very, very competitive. There's a lot of other science fairs around the state. Nebraska City has a few big ones. And there's actually cash prizes offered. They have corporate sponsors, and students can win hundreds of dollars for not only the top overall prize, but maybe the top prize in a specific area, or if they excelled in um, one specific aspect of their project. So there are a number of opportunities. When holding your local science fair, though, gym works great, a lunchroom, a commons area, anywhere large enough to accommodate the tables and the projects, and of course a lot of visitors that will want to join you as well.
Okay, the planning process. We know we're going to have a science fair every year, so we always remind them in the fall, in the beginning of the school year, that we're going to have a science fair and start gathering some ideas and maybe just as they're living their daily lives, a question comes into their mind as to why something is a certain way. We try to encourage that, and then maybe that would lead into a project for them. So there's some ownership there, and it's really meaningful for them. And then usually in December, Sara and I would get together and start mapping out a timeline. And I'll show you a typical timeline that we came up with. But then in January, we would send a letter home to parents. It would have a safety guide and a contract that they would have to sign. Part of that was to make sure they understood that they couldn't use explosives. We're not going to harm anyone or any animals. And also, on a side note, we made sure that both the students and the parents understood that if they were going to use animals, that the students and parents were responsible for those animals after the science fair was over. So it wasn't the the responsibility of the science teacher. And then a copy of the timeline. We made a PowerPoint. Actually, Sara made a PowerPoint to review the expectations. And we'll talk about a little later whether or not you would do an individual project or a group project. We showed them the rubrics, and we'll show you some examples that we used for our rubrics, and then reviewed the scientific method that they are going to be expected to go through. We set the timelines and the deadlines, and again, I'll show you what we did, either deadlines or a time that we provided in class, and then lined up some judges. It's important to start getting some ideas about judges ahead of time because if you wait to the last minute, it might be hard to find some. We typically looked at retired teachers, ESU personnel. I would be a good resource there. Some professionals in the community were great. People through 4-H were wonderful. So there's a lot of resources out there for judges. And if you need some suggestions, certainly give us a call or let me know. We also used a Google Calendar or a learning management system. In our school, we had Angel, and we were a Google school. And we used that a great deal, and it was a lot of help in organizing all the submissions of the students. And if you happen to be a Google school, I won't go into the details now, but I would be happy to get together with you and help you set up maybe your Google Drive to help with the submission of a lot of the projects and pieces of the science fair. But then we made a calendar on either Angel or Google that the students could access, which was very beneficial in terms of what they were going to do each day and when the deadlines were. So, time
This is,
frames.
this is a list of our time frames. Um, and you can see there's the steps of the scientific method and what we would do in class. So basically for their group and their topic approved, that was not it didn't take a full day to do that. Basically, they had their deadline and they just had to tell me who their group members were and what their topic was. Their problem statement, again, just had a deadline. And as we moved into using more and more technology through the Google Drive, that would actually be submitted via the Google Drive by that deadline. When it came to the research paper, we would give 2 days in class for them to work on it. Um, those would be the research days. If they needed more time than that, that was their homework that they would follow up with on their own. Again, hypothesis, just a deadline. For testing and experimenting, we would provide 4 days for them to do this. They were not 4 days in a row, though. The reason that we chose to do it this way is because sometimes the students would be doing projects where 4 days in a row would not be helpful to their project at all. For instance, if they were growing plants or they were growing some sort of a fungus or bacteria and they needed to wait in between the days, we would not give them simultaneously. That way they could take advantage of those 4 days. For some students, 4 days was enough for their testing time. For other students, they needed more time than that, and it was up to them to come in and test or test on their own. I've seen in science fairs where maybe they do all the testing outside of class. I've seen science fairs where the teacher has them do all of their testing inside of class. I think part of it depends on the age of the students. Maybe if you're looking at elementary, it could go one way or the other. I personally liked doing a little bit of both because it really encouraged them to use their time wisely. They know they're not going to have unlimited time to do it, so they need to be organized and ready to test. I also like it them testing in the room with me because I can really get involved with their project and see what they're doing, provide feedback for them. I love using questions to probe their knowledge. So as they're going through, making sure that they're really thinking about what's happening and why it's happening, so that when they get to coming up with their conclusions, they've thought about some of these main points. So I really enjoyed, found it beneficial to stay in really good contact with them through the testing procedure, the testing part of it. Again, the procedure just had a deadline. We gave them a day to analyze their results, mainly because they would usually have to come up with some sort of a chart or graph, maybe a picture display of what was happening. And that was something that we really wanted them to work on together, so on and so forth. Something else that we were able to successfully implement was a lot of collaboration with other teachers. And we did this at the junior high level especially. Um, for the research paper, I had felt for a few years that I wasn't able to really do the research paper justice. I felt like I was a good writer, but I didn't have enough time to really discuss the ins and outs of researching and how to do good research and how to put it all together. And so mainly it was I would sign a paper and then I would get it and correct it and we would go from there. But I was able to link up with our language arts teacher who was looking for a good project for her students to meet the requirements on her end about researching basically. So we got together and we would create a calendar with each other, where she would actually teach how to do the research, and they would use my science topic from their science fair project for the content. And so as we would go through their papers, she would correct them and analyze them for the structure and organization, and I would go through them for the content. If it was the right area of content, the correct level of depth, things like that. So the students really got a much, much more effective paper because they were being instructed in her class as well. So the junior high students actually would get a little bit more time to work on it because they were also being taught how to do the research to begin with. When we implemented this change, the research, the quality of the research really went up significantly. So if you can work with other teachers, that's beneficial. Also working with the math teacher, with Heidi, we could do the data analysis step, making graphs, making charts, implementing all the number figures into the math class and how to analyze graphs and things like that. We were also able to work with our technology teacher, doing things. If there was computer issues or they wanted to learn a new program on the computer, she was more than willing to help them. She also had one of her classes, the digital media class, would create a video of their testing. So they would videotape different parts of their testing, put together a presentation that could be playing on the laptop at the science fair. So it was really a good project to really integrate these different subject areas and made it much, much more meaningful for the students. And the students seemed to really take advantage of that and realize that it wasn't just about science, but it was about incorporating a whole bunch of different areas into the project rather than just science itself.
And if I could add a couple notes there too, we were in a very small school, and our students were involved in so many activities and aspects of their school life. So there's different philosophies about providing work time in class, but I think Sarah and I felt that providing at least some time in class was very beneficial to these students, especially with how active they were in many other things. So okay,
I
some
would agree with.
expectations. Oh, go ahead, Sarah.
I was just going to add to that. If there was a class that really had been using their class time wisely, one class that I would commonly give an extra day or two would be chemistry, just because of the limitations of that. If they were using chemicals, I couldn't necessarily send the chemicals home with them to test on their own. So the chemistry class might get a couple extra days. So, we were flexible with it, but in rare cases. So I think you just have to know what's best for your students, like Heidi was saying.
And it was also very progressive in terms of each year we tried to add a little tweak here and there. So once we became a Google school, we decided, okay, let's try to incorporate using collaborative learning into our science fairs. And then one year we said, okay, let's try to use more technology. Let's try to use some of the TI calculator and probes maybe that we could use, and have them take video and use those as part of their presentation. So each year we tried to came up with a little theme that we could tweak it a little bit and make it a little better. So
As far as the expectations go, we had expectations for the individuals. They had to make sure that they were doing the actual written part of the scientific method themselves, even though they were working with a group. It's very important that each individual came up with that so that they could learn that scientific method. Also, that showed that they were basically participating. We also had the group expectations, how we expected them to work together as a group, how we expected them to present the night of the science fair. We had expectations as far as dress goes, what we would expect presenters to wear. So we made it very clear that we expected them to dress up, and we're very specific about what we wanted to see them in. And of course, attendance at the science fair. They went through a lot of work making these projects, and it was expected and demanded that they were in attendance that night at the science fair.
as Sarah mentioned, we did have a dress rubric, and it's always important to show students exemplars, both good and bad, as what we would expect. So I love Sarah's creativity here in creating some of these examples of what we would expect to see. And I think the judges really appreciated this. I know we had some judges that worked in Norfolk, some professionals, and they really liked seeing this. They know these students worked hard on these. Like it or not, first impressions are important. And if they really want to show off their project and how proud they are of their work, then they should also dress that way. So we felt that was important aspect of their presentation.
I would like to add that these pictures were put together before the internet would have allowed me. I suppose I could have used the internet, but these were cut out from just magazines that I had. So your dress rubric could be much more impressive than this one. All right,
Sarah?
this was the individual grading rubric that we used. Basically, I was looking at three big categories. Did they meet their deadlines? Did they apply and demonstrate the scientific method? And then what was the quality of their work? Uh, and some people like to emphasize more of the scientific method part. Some people emphasize more of the quality work. So, each individual could tweak that to however they wanted. But for our purposes, this is what we thought worked the best as we went through those individual packets. Did they correctly use all the steps? And of course, were they complete and accurate? Now, each individual would receive a different grade. So even if a group had 3 people in it, they could all receive a different grade on this part of it because they were turning in these pieces individually.
And then we also had a rubric for their group, and this is what we provided to the judges, and we also the students saw it, so they knew what they were going to be judged on. But it was nice to provide this to the judges ahead of time, so they had an idea as to what they're going to be looking for when they come in. I think, as most anyone knows who's judged a science fair, unfortunately, you probably don't have as much time as you'd like to spend with each group. So it helps to know what the categories are and the level of expectations that they have for their students. So we had an audience appeal, and this is something we worked really hard with our students. Grab their attention. Have it something that most everyone would be interested in, or would affect their lives. What could you say, or have available to them, whether it's a video or something on your board that would really attract their attention. And then the process used, was their scientific method appropriate? Did they follow the process? Did they answer questions successfully in terms of their knowledge? And then, as we showed you with the rubric, how was their appearance, both how did they dress as well as their presentation of their material? Were their boards neat? Were things labeled appropriately? And it really was a very interesting conversation that you could have with these students about their project.
The night of the science fair, we really encouraged a lot of community involvement. We, of course, always invited the newspaper guy to come up and take pictures and report on what was going on. The elementary students were encouraged to come over during the day as our students set up their projects, but also to come back at night when they could really interact with those students as they were showing off their projects. Have a book fair is across the top. We could also coordinate this with our annual school book fair, so people could come and visit the science fair and then also go support the book fair as well. Star Lab, you get some good activities that people would be interested in. The Star Lab, the Star Dome, you can get from the ESU. Um, School staff, our school staff was very, very supportive, and the students loved seeing their other teachers come to support their efforts. And of course, family members. The family members, parents, siblings, grandmas, grandpas, uncles, they were all invited, and we did have very good showing. They all really came to support not only their own relatives, but also the students from their class all over. Um, Another thing I've seen at a local science fair is they actually had a presenter come in and do some kind of whiz bang experiments for the kids. So people would walk around the science fair, and then there was about a half an hour session of kind of showing off some science experiments. So that was a really good idea that I just saw this year too.
Yeah, a lot of schools are always looking for ways to involve parents in the community, and this would be a great way to get people involved. It was always a very busy gym at our school on science fair night, and it was just so fun to see and to really see the excitement of the students in presenting their projects because they were really proud of their work. They really were.
I would echo that. A lot of the pictures that we have from the night of the science fair, not only are the presenters smiling, but the visitors are smiling too. It really was a very interactive night. That's one thing I know we would encourage our students was find ways to not only talk to the public about what you did, but actually involve them, whether that be actually testing the visitors using the same tests you used. For instance, we had one group that did a distracted driving project where they had people play Mario Kart and try to text while they were playing and show their results. And they actually had a TV set up in the gym, and visitors would come by and play the Mario Kart game and actually see for themselves if they could do better than the results that the students had found. If we had memory tests, if we had anything dealing with force, or things that they could really get the audience involved with the testing, that was a really good way to involve the community, and the community, I think, really enjoyed getting involved with it too. A lot of times the students had hands-on demos. For instance, they might have some organs there that they had dissected, and as the people walked around, they could look at these different organs they had, or just other demonstrations that they could actually get involved with, whether it was building an aquifer or doing some water tests or different things like that. They really did work to involve the community.
And if you live in a rural area, there are usually plenty of opportunities to find resources for things that you need to do experiments with. So it was a lot of fun. We've had everything from lungs to cow lungs to cow eyes and all sorts of things. So it's been really a great community project doing science fairs. So well, that is really all we had to present about science fairs, and this is just a picture of me and Sarah. We proudly fly our nerd flags high. This, I believe, was from homecoming. Um, so we had a good time. We enjoyed working together and being nerds together and working on science fairs. It was just great opportunity to see the kids excel in areas that made them think outside the box and use their creative thinking caps. So we really enjoyed science fairs. And we would love to talk to anyone about creating a science fair. We have a lot of resources we'd be willing to provide, our rubrics, anything to help get you started. And I would be more than happy to be a judge. Sarah's a little further away, but I would be more than happy to do that. So if you have any questions, Jennifer, you can type them in there. Or just give me a call sometime. And I thank Sarah for helping to present. She's been a wealth of knowledge, so I have learned a great deal from her. So thanks for helping me today, Sarah.
Not a problem. I always love to encourage the science fairs. A great experience.